Auburn's got a shot for a ridiculous 5-star edge coming to town.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It's Recruiting Thursday. We're joined by Brian Smith, Locked On recruiting expert. We're going to talk about, does Auburn have another incredible wide receiver class coming, as well as a few defensive targets we need to know? But I want to start things off, Brian. Zion Elee, one of the several very talented players expected to be at Auburn next weekend for their junior day. It almost seems like it's a Big Cat-esque list of very talented guys coming in. But Zion Elee, number 1 edge in the country, number 3 player in the country according to On3, 5-star, committed to Maryland, but he's expected to be visiting Auburn next weekend.
This is one of my favorite players in the class. I got to see him at the Under Armour All-American practices. It took about 10 seconds to realize why he had so many offers. So length, speed, explosiveness, very intelligent kid. There's no reason he's not an NFL player barring injury. It's anybody can evaluate him really, really quick.
Yeah. So when you look at Zion Elee, I mean, like you said, it's very clear to understand, okay, this guy is special, but just where he is, he's a local Maryland guy, right? And so Maryland, it seems like, has put the full court press on him early. He's committed to Maryland, but as you said, every major recruiting force in college football is hitting this guy up. I mean, what are the chances that Maryland holds on to a guy like this?
Well, it depends on your perspective. Historically, it would be awful because they've had so many kids like this committed, or they had the lead.
Yeah.
They rarely sign with the Terrapins. That's what history will tell you. Even in basketball, Duke and North Carolina, and everybody always plucks from DC. And it's a suburb where that school's at of DC. But this is one kid that took that opportunity to stay local. And he told me when I was meeting with him that until recently he hadn't even been talking to other schools. And I'm like, wow. And he said, my phone's constantly blowing up, but I'm committed to Maryland, Penn State, Auburn, everybody under the sun had been hitting him up. He just now starting to talk to schools, apparently.
Yeah. So when you look at him being the top edge in this class, and Auburn already has guys like Hezekiah Harris committed, who's the number 7 edge, according to On3. And they've got other guys that they're talking to, including Jamichael Garrett being kind of a part of that too. Not Jamichael Garrett, Tank, the number 1 player in the state, who I believe you've talked to as well.
Yep.
I mean, I kind of get the vibe that these edge guys like playing together, or am I misreading that?
Nobody likes getting chipped and double teamed.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like receivers, right? Like, you could be a great receiver, but you're going to be a better receiver if there's another great receiver on the team.
Yeah, great players prefer to play with other great players anyway because you want to win, but especially when it dwindles your stats and lowers your NFL draft stock, there's a good reason to go play with other guys.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see if that helps at all. I don't know what Maryland's full situation is there. It's so far out, but these events, and Auburn's not the only school that has these, obviously, but these events where it's just, sometimes they have an official name like Junior Day or Big Cat, but this staff has done a good job of kind of making it these unofficial big weekends where it's just a who's who list of all of these guys that are coming in. Hugh Freeze has seemed to be one of the better coaches in kind of creating these weekends and letting there be a ton of buzz around the Southeast as far as the big names that are being recruited by everybody. What does he do differently when it comes to like creating these types of big recruiting weekends from your point of view?
2 things that I've noticed is he lets his staff just be themselves. How you recruit is how you recruit. There are a few kids. I was talking to a trainer last night. There's a kid in Florida that loves Auburn, and it's because he likes one of the assistant coaches.
Okay.
And you will just let the guys be themselves. That's first, because players don't like fake. Secondarily, they come up with unique things when they come to Auburn to do for games, different trivia. They do anything they can to make it a memorable experience. Because after a while, you can only tour facilities for so long. And they're all, I don't care which SEC school you go to, they're pretty good. So,
Yeah,
you know
sure.
what I mean? It's got to be something memorable. And from just seeing you around recruits, he's a normal guy around the kids. Like he'll come out before one of the games right by the goalpost there, and he's talking to the recruits, and it's right in front of the media. And you would just think he's a local guy hanging out with some youngsters.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the far away guy that's at the top of the castle. And I think recruits like that a lot.
Yeah, it definitely seems approachable. That's what I hear from a lot of the recruits, is just a guy who's super fun to talk to. So we'll see exactly what that looks like. But yeah, Zion Elee expected to visit next weekend. And like we said, one of the best players. You mentioned one of your favorite players in this class.
Oh,
we'll see. We'll see exactly how Auburn stacks up. But something that's always interesting is like when you look at these visitor lists, and this is going to grow by the time we talk next week, I'm sure, Brian, at least I'd be shocked if it didn't. But for every guy that you've got, like a Zion Elee, that's maybe a newer name that Auburn's pursuing, you've got a guy who's committed that's going to be there, like Hezekiah Harris, and you've got other guys that have visited, it seems like, a ton, like Tank, the number one player in the state that we just mentioned. I think kind of diversifying, the committed versus the guys who maybe aren't committed but have been around the program a lot, and then also maybe some new guys, some newer names that haven't been to Auburn as much, or maybe it's their first time. I think that mix is always strategic, and I think it makes a ton of sense because you want kind of all three levels of familiarity with the program.
Oh, absolutely. You need guys that have been there, and they will speak to the other recruits like, this is what happens here on a game day weekend. This is what the coaches are like.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get asked that question above all else to be trusted. Other players, their peers. And also, if any of them are committed, it obviously helps you because they're recruiting that player to Auburn University. So that's very important. To that end, like Emmanuel Iheanacho is coming, another DC kid. I know that's probably not somebody you're familiar with, but he's 6'7", 352.
Saw his name on the list. Yeah, I mean, he's got all the accolades you want.
Yeah, I met him at Under Armour, and he's scary to walk up to. I thought I was going to get slapped between two pieces of bread, but he's coming too. So you get multiple kids from, like Maryland is their out of the region state. That's where they focused a lot of their efforts. And those kids are going to be more familiar and more comfortable with Auburn if they visit together. It's a smart move by the Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, the St. Francis stuff, it's just wild.
But yeah, that's true too.
Gyra Edwards, also a St. Francis kid who, it was reported that he's going to be visiting too as well, the number 4 safety in the class. I mean, St. Francis must just wreck people. I mean, it's insane the amount of talent that they've got. But clearly a pipeline has been formed here where if you're an elite player at St. Francis, like you got to take a look at Auburn. And so like what do we know about Edwards?
Edwards is arguably the best safety in the class of 2026. I was watching some of his film again earlier today. He's pretty good in zone coverage, and he's just a thumper. Like he could play linebacker, that overhang position long term, and he'd be fine. Really good change of direction for a bigger guy. I would be surprised if his recruitment slows down. Ohio State really wants him, etc. Like you name a school, they're after him. And again, it's St. Francis, so that's not shocking, but like he stands out amongst numerous Power 4 players. So that puts things in perspective.
Yeah. So there's two St. Francis Academy names from Maryland, which is going to be a fun pipeline to follow over the next few years. So that's Zion Elee, the 5-star edge, and then Gyra Edwards, the 4-star safety, according to On3. We got another defender that I want to talk to you about, and then let's pivot to wide receivers. I think Auburn maybe is putting together a very impressive wide receiver class for the second time in 3 years. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. From the final whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5. You get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app, it's easy to use, easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to whatever game you're watching. Visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL, and of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. Brian Smith, Locked On recruiting expert, hanging out with us on today's show. Anthony Davis, the linebacker from Grayson. Seems like Auburn and Florida are really in it for this guy. 6'1", 190 is what it's listed at in most places. But it's been reported that he is visiting Auburn as well. And this is a guy that the staff seems to really, really like, Brian.
They've had him on campus before, and Grayson's a priority school. So it should be, by the way, for pretty much anybody that recruits the state of Georgia. Grayson's an automatic stop, one of the top 5 programs in the Peach State. He can run sideline to sideline.
Okay.
And he could eventually be a guy that's a combination player. Maybe he plays some outside backer, rushes to quarterback, whatever, but just athletic as all get out. And I'm curious to see what Auburn's pitch to him is in terms of a position. This is where it gets fun for me. How do you want to pigeon this guy into one hole or another? Or do you really not know? That's okay too. But I'm sure this is going to be a recruitment that'll come down to the end because like every SEC school alone, not counting the Ohio States and Michigans and whatnot, will be involved. Getting him on campus again, though, is important. They've had a lot of success in the Atlanta area of late. Carter, who we'll talk about in a minute, is another one. But this is how you get over the top. Auburn's dominating in-state, but you need to get a few of the kids that Georgia wants if you really want to get over the top.
Yeah. And this is your typical SEC player, SEC recruitment. I mean, it seems
100%.
like it's Florida. It seems like it's Tennessee. I think he's got Texas calling him pretty often too, is what I read. So, I mean, this is the run of the mill elite SEC battle. Like, forget about the 4-star or whatever. Like, this guy can play. Everybody in the conference wants him. Your comment about like what the pitch for his position, I thought that was interesting. Are you talking about like different types of linebackers as far as like, is he a Mike? Is he a Will? Or do you think he could be athletic enough to be like a nickel if they needed him to do that sort of thing? Or is he strictly a linebacker in your mind?
I think he could play some nickel. It just depends on how you wanted to use it circumstantially. Goal line situations, teams that run it. There's no such thing as a linebacker that plays with just one spot anymore. That's why the spot is so hard, and you don't see a lot of freshmen playing it. I think that Auburn is smart in that the guys that they played early, like last season, they played them downhill for the most part. Move forward. Don't worry about a million things after the snap because that makes it too complex. This is another kid. If you didn't overcomplicate him with the playbook, I don't care if it's Georgia, I don't care if it's Florida, Auburn, wherever, he would get on the field. Okay. Now the question is, what's he most comfortable with based on your scheme? And everybody's a little different. But I think you would take him in any of the spots and just kind of let the situation fall into whatever place it goes.
Yeah, right. Pivot to the offensive side of the football. You and I were texting the other day about Derrek Cooper, the Florida native, very talented running back, listed at 6 foot, about 190. I feel like he plays bigger than that, Brian. So he may have put on some weight since he measured in at some of these places. But what stands out to you about Derrek Cooper? And he's from Chaminade, Madonna, which is seems to be I guess Auburn's trying to build that into a hotbed too, but so is every college football program in America.
They've won like 9 state titles in a row or something like that. It's insane.
Yeah.
But
that's
where Jeremiah Smith went, for anybody that's curious. They've had some players.
And of course, Derrek is teammates with Denarius Gray,
That's
the receiver
exactly
who's committed to Auburn right now.
Cooper is arguably the best player in Florida for this next year. And the only he's that good.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a good kid.
High praise. Yeah.
Well, it's bona fide. He's a kid. The only question is which side of the ball will he play? He prefers running back a little bit more than linebacker, but most analysts prefer he play linebacker. It is what it is. Georgia, all the Florida schools, Auburn, you name it, program, they're after him. The question is, how do you sway him? Like, he grew up a Georgia fan, but Miami's after him. Auburn needs to win this weekend that he comes and sway him. But Denarius, this is one of those situations we were talking about a little bit ago. Having Gray committed to the Tigers should help, and they need playmakers. Like, if he wants to play running back, he's that good, it doesn't matter. At the Under Armour All-American game, he was one of the best players there, and he was an underclassman.
Mm-hmm.
So it just doesn't matter. He makes guys miss in space, and he's got power to run you over.
Yeah.
He's an all-around running back, and it's his second best position. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it looks like he decommitted from Georgia. And then it sounds like most of his visits are to Miami so far.
It's
yeah.
close.
Is that a proximity thing? Is it an
100%.
interesting? Is it a combination of the two? But it looks like he's visited Auburn multiple times, also visited Ohio State multiple times. So once again, talking about like the level of recruit that this is. I mean, it's, the top programs want him for sure.
Yeah, I would be shocked if his recruitment ended anytime soon. Once he committed to Georgia, then backed off, the people around him were like, let's take a step
breath.
back here.
Yeah, right.
Might as well take your visits. Auburn needs to win this weekend in the sense of if you do well, you get an OB. If you get an OB, you got a shot. So, again, conservatively, he's a top 25 player nationally. I think he's as good a player as there is in the state of Florida for this next class. And by the way, getting more than one player from Chaminade and Madonna would not suck.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. Yeah, if you wanna kind of do the same thing that you did to the St. Francis up in Maryland, if you want to do that to Chaminade and Madonna, you take that in a heartbeat. Yeah, I mean, Derrek Cooper is one of those guys where like you just look at a picture of him and like you would guess like this guy plays college football now. He's got another year and a half of high school, so it's just kind of amazing to see how some of these guys develop. I mean, this guy is just ready to play at the SEC level. All right, yeah, I want to talk about his teammate and specifically this receiver class could be incredibly special. When we talked about the Freeze 4 2 years ago with Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson and Bryce Kane and Malcolm Simmons, I don't know if it's going to be that good, but I do think you can have the conversation for when it's all said and done. Let's jump into that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions in winnings. Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all of the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action more than with Prize Picks. So all you do is you simply pick more or less on at least two players, and if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's 1,000 times. I did not misread that. So be ready to run your game this football season. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, LOCKEDONCollege. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. Brian Smith, Locked On recruiting expert, hanging out with us. So you look at the current state of Auburn's class with Devin Carter committing and then Denarius Gray, who we've already mentioned, two elite receiving targets already. But then you look at Sedarian Morgan, which seems like Auburn is really leading the way for him. We've talked about him the last few times on this show, the Benjamin Russell standout, and Auburn seems in it with several other wide receivers. Brian, let's assume they get 4 receivers because it seems like they're planning on stocking up again, and maybe they want more than 4. We'll see. But you just look at the early start that they have, and let's assume CD Morgan ends up a part of this class because that's what most people are predicting. You're starting to see the crystal balls and the RPMs come in. The starting point, so early on in the cycle with so much to go, with CD Morgan and joining the 2 guys already committed. I mean, where would you put Auburn's receiving class at this point?
It's already trending towards top 10 conservatively, and I know it's early.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're talking about a class that you got Morgan's right down the road. He's in Alexander City.
Right.
So you got Carter, and you've already got the young man from Chaminade. So you're halfway home to 4 just by that. And you're the favorite for the kid right down the road that's the big-bodied boundary receiver. You would only need one more guy from wherever to have arguably the best wide receiver group in the country. I mean, they would at least be in the conversation.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, they're all different too, which is ideal in my mind. And I think that's something where like you can look at rankings and stack them up, but it's like can all like let's say you get 5 elite high 4-star guys, but if they're all the same type of receiver, it's like they can't all play at the same time, so it doesn't matter. That's why I love the Cam Coleman class, because you looked at all 4 of them and it's like all 4 of these guys can like serve a role. And I think you could do that with the type of guys that Auburn's pursuing in the 2026 class. When you look at Sedarian Morgan, go ahead, Brian, real quick.
No, I was just going to say, like the boundary receiver position is the hardest to get, and that's why Cam was so important. Plus, he was local.
Yeah,
having another guy like that close to help this get along, especially, it wouldn't shock me if Morgan made his decision early. He's a really highly intellectual kid. He'll know where he wants to go. That would help Auburn a lot.
Have you been able to see CD in person?
Oh yeah, multiple times.
The 6'5" thing, is that legit?
He's at least 6'4", and he's put together. He's 205 to 210. He rotates in that weight, like, and he's swell, like he's put together the way you should. Long arms, the whole 9 yards. He's he's a nightmare in a matchup because like fade balls and stuff. He's just too big.
I just can't imagine like a high school corner that's not a D1 athlete. It's like, what do you do? Like, if you're a coach, like you have to, and just hope they don't call it. Yeah,
that's literally what happens because there's no way you're going to guard him very easily. He's a little twitchier than you would think for a big guy too.
His body control is pretty solid for a guy that his size and his age. It's like, man, this guy's gonna. I mean, everything he does projects so well at the next level.
100%, and that's the bottom line. Like, you can't have guys that are that big and not find a way to utilize them in the red zone. He's like an extra tight end on the field. Plus, he's bigger to help you in the run game with blocking. Everything's a win.
Yeah. So you think CD will commit? What do you think he commits before the summer?
I think there's a chance that he would be done by the end of April, early May. He's a little different kid. Like, again, he's pretty sharp. And if he wants to play it out, so be it. He has not told me he's not going to do that. But Florida, Auburn, Ohio State, those are three of the schools I know he's liked. But we'll see who comes at him in the next month or so and what junior days he goes to. But I think Auburn's the odds-on favorite.
Yeah. I mean, he's as a freshman, so this would be the 2026. So, like, would he be a guy that backs up Cam, you think, for that 1 year of overlap? Yeah, you think he's that type of receiver?
Boundary guy that, I mean, Cam's more physically explosive, like just speed-wise, but Cam wasn't this. I don't even know if Cam's as big as him now.
No, you can't teach 6'5" with that length. You can't teach that.
No.
That's just God-given. So
yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, so he's got it. So yeah, we'll see. That would definitely give Auburn great footing when it comes to having an elite receiver class. CD listed as the number 3 receiver right now in the class, number 2 player in the state of Alabama. Once again, like, you take all of those things every single time. Top 20 player nationally. So we'll see. Brian, your overall thoughts of just like the top players in Alabama are now like the top players in the country. I mean, they've got more top 100 players than they've had in recent memory. I mean, obviously winning the state now is more important than ever.
Well, not only are you bona fide getting good players to your program, you're keeping them from Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, your 3 prime rivals.
Yeah.
Those are the main 3 schools that Auburn competes with historically. Florida State and Florida recruit there pretty heavily too. It doesn't hurt to keep them away. So I think that Auburn's doing the right thing there. But again, they're just cherry picking St. Francis, Chaminade, stuff like that. The kid I mentioned a little while ago that likes one of the coaches at Auburn, his name is Javar Bowden. He's a flex tight end from Panama City. That's an elite player. They're just trying to get kids that are within like a 5-hour radius and then a couple that are outside. They want to keep it kind of a home field, which is what the Auburn community is, as you and I both know personally.
Sure.
They want that kind of fit. And it's brilliant. Sometimes it's right in front of you. The forest for the trees. Auburn's doing that. Let's not make this too complex. We got great players here. Let's bring them in.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Brian, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
At FBScout_Florida on X. Still a lot of stuff going on with the portal. And to be honest with you, now the junior days, the next 3 weekends, junior days, Auburn and everywhere else, Florida State, Miami, everywhere. Big. It's a really important time for recruiting. You'll find out who's going to win in recruiting in June right now.
Yeah, no question about it. Hey, please like the video, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.